We finally made it to the bottom of the mysterious person tier list. I started this back in January, and this has taken way longer than I wanted it to. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. Indrid Cold, aka the Smiling Man, aka the Grinning Man, refers to a human or possible alien that was spotted in West Virginia. In 1966, Woodrow Derenberger, a sewing machine salesman, was returning home from a business trip from Ohio to his home in Mineral Wells, West Virginia. While driving, he noticed some strange lights ahead of him. He thought it was the police, so he pulled over. But to Woodrow's surprise, it wasn't the police. According to him, it was an aircraft, and he said it looked like a kerosene lamp chimney. And then a man stepped out of this aircraft and approached him. Woodrow said he looked natural and as normal as any other human being. He had a deep suntan with dark brown hair, and it was combed straight back. His eyes, eyebrows, rest of his face, all normal. But he wasn't normal. He had a large grin on his face and kept his arms folded underneath his armpit. The creepiest part, though, was according to Woodrow, when he spoke to him, his smile never moved. He spoke to him telepathically. He asked Woodrow to roll down the passenger window on his truck, and Woodrow complied. The strange man then asked Woodrow what would he like to be called. He thought that was a strange question, and he just assumed he meant his name. So he said Woodrow. Then he asked, "Why are you frightened? Don't be frightened. We wish you no harm. We mean you no harm. We only wish you happiness." And then he told Woodrow that his name was Indrid Cold. After this strange encounter, Woodrow went to the police, and it became a media frenzy. Woodrow agreed to be interviewed by the local TV network, which he then told the story that I just told you. Also part of this interview were local and state police, members of the local airport, and a representative from the Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. Suspicious? And for 30 minutes, these men asked Woodrow all these questions live on air. And after the interview aired, others came forth and said they saw something very similar in the same area at the same time. Some claimed to have even seen strange lights, and the weirdest of all is some claimed to have passed Woodrow when he was pulled over, and they said he was talking to a strange man on the side of the road. The news ran these stories for a couple weeks, but eventually it all died down. But Indrid Cold's visits didn't stop. Woodrow claimed that he was still being visited by this strange man, and even his family confirmed that they did see him. Woodrow, obviously concerned, went to the doctor. He thought, maybe I'm crazy, maybe there's something wrong with me, but the doctor gave him a clean bill of health and saw nothing wrong with him. Woodrow then decided to go ahead and write a book about this experience, but nothing good came from that idea. His family kept receiving harassing phone calls, and some even lost their jobs due to this. This caused Woodrow to suffer from painful headaches, depression, and eventually his wife even leaving him. Woodrow then moved away to escape the harassment and lived away for many years. But in 1990, at the age of 74, 23 years after the incident, he decided to move back to Mineral Wells, West Virginia. He never recanted his statement, but he also never spoke of Cold again. Since this story has come out, Indrid Cold has become kind of a rural myth and legend, especially in the West Virginia area. He's even been linked to the Mothman, and even had an appearance in the Mothman Prophecies movie.
Hello, John Klein.
Who is this?
My name is Indrid Cold.
Probably because they both take place in West Virginia. But this story is pretty wild and interesting. But what do you think? Is Indrid Cold real, or did Woodrow make him up? Comment down below. Celebrity number 6 is kind of a weird one. It's about an unknown celebrity whose face is on these curtains that were then posted to Reddit and became a mystery. Let me explain. In January of 2020, a Reddit user named Tansta H made posts on several subreddits about these curtains that she had full of pop art and 8 unknown celebrities. She needed help identifying these celebrities, so she reached out to Reddit for help. According to Tansta, these curtains were bought in a local store in Finland in 2008. The Redditors dug and dug and dug, and they eventually found that the fabric probably came from a company in the Czech Republic called Lagny Mraz. I think that's how you pronounce it. And after making some phone calls and emails, they found that that fabric was most likely an exclusive from that company, or produced from a vendor named Robert Kaufman. Since making the post in 2020, 7 out of the 8 celebrities have been identified. They all have a clear-cut example photo that the fabric is imitating. Celebrity 1 is Adriana Lima, a model for Victoria's Secret. Celebrity 2 is Josh Holloway. Celebrity 3, once again, Adriana Lima. Celebrity 4 is Jessica Alba. Celebrity 5 is Travis Fimmel. Celebrity 6 is unknown. Celebrity 7 is Ian Somerhalder, and Celebrity 8 is Orlando Bloom. Whenever they weren't able to decide who number 6 was, they made their own subreddit, Celebrity Number 6. But despite them having their own subreddit, and many people trying to crack it, no one's been able to solve it yet. I mean, it's even disputed on if the gender of the Celebrity Number 6 is male or female. 65% of the Redditors believe it's female, while 35% believe it's male. There's a list of celebrities that they believe it could be. Olivia Wilde, Kristen Bell, Kate Hudson, Johnny Depp, Brad Pitt, Hilary Duff, and Angelina Jolie are some of the top names. Most of the Redditors believe it's Olivia Wilde. They believe she's the best candidate due to her facial structure, but to this day there's no proof or source photo to definitively say that. Who do you think Celebrity Number 6 is? Comment down below if you have any ideas. The Black Volga murders isn't necessarily a mysterious person, more of an urban legend. And this urban legend is very widespread in Eastern European countries, including Poland, Russia, and Ukraine. The urban legend is about a black, sometimes red, Volga, more particularly a Gas 21 or Gas 24, with white rims that allegedly used to abduct and murder people. According to the stories, there are different people who are driving this black Volga, depending on what legend you believe. Some say it's driven by the communist secret police, the KGB, Satanists, or even Satan himself. Supposedly, the victims are abducted and then murdered by who's ever driving the black Volga. Part of the urban legend is also that their blood and organs are then used as a cure for rich Westerners or Arabs suffering from leukemia and other illnesses. All the stories that had Satan driving the black Volga had a license plate of 666 and white curtains over the windows. The driver, Satan, would then stop and ask you for the time. And then once you walked up close to the car, he would then kill you. In other stories, the driver will say, "You will die at this hour tomorrow." However, if you answered it's God's time, the car would quickly vanish. That's all I can find on this subject. I can firmly say I've never heard of this urban legend prior to researching it for this video. What do you think? Never mind, don't tell me. I already know what you're gonna say. Alexander Solonik was a Russian gangster who was also known for his reputation as a notorious hitman in the Russian criminal underworld. Alexander was born in the 1960s in Soviet Russia, and at an early age he showed interest in wrestling and firearms, saying, as a child, he befriended a guy named Andrei Kologov. This friend would eventually grow up and lead the Kurgan criminal organization. And this is one of the reasons that Alexander joined the criminal underworld later in life. Alexander Solonik was then conscripted after high school into the army, where he became a tanker. Once his service was over, he became a patrolman in the Ministry of Internal Affairs, or the MVD. But after 6 months, he was expelled and returned home. Once he returned back home in Kurgan, he got a job as a gravedigger with some other of his friends. While working as a gravedigger, he got married and had a kid. They then got divorced and he remarried and had a second kid. But in 1987, Alexander was charged with rape and sentenced to 8 years in prison. But before he turned himself in, he had a farewell meeting with his wife, where he then escaped by jumping from the second floor window. He stayed on the run for a few months, but eventually was caught about 120 miles away, and then was taken to prison. Alexander was originally put in solitary confinement for his safety because he used to work with law enforcement, but eventually they just put him in general pop. Due to him working with the police in the past, he was marked for death and had several attempts on his life. And according to one rumor, he defended himself against 12 prisoners at the same time, which gained him a lot of respect and reputation among the other prisoners. But finally, after 2 years of imprisonment, he decided he was going to escape again. Alexander returned home to Kurgan, where he joined the local criminal organization and became a hitman. Interesting career choice. He was very successful as a hitman and got a lot of reputation in the criminal underworld. I mean, there's even a story about him gunning down a Russian mob boss in a crowded nightclub while he was surrounded by his bodyguards. Since Alexander had such a reputation, law enforcement took a special interest in trying to capture him. One day, the Moscow police apprehended Alexander and a colleague in a marketplace while they were drinking. They took Alexander and his friend back to the police station, but The police failed to search Alexander, and we know this because he was carrying a Glock 17, which they then opened fire in the police station. 3 policemen were hit, and then Alex ran outside and shot 2 more. Alex was also shot in the kidney at this time, and he was eventually overpowered and surrendered. He had surgery to remove the bullet, and then was placed in prison again. But he didn't stay there long. That's right, Alexander escaped prison once again in 1995. Someone on the inside provided Alexander with a gun, climbing equipment, and a mannequin. He used the gun and the climbing equipment to escape, while leaving the mannequin in his bed underneath his blanket, buying him more time. Since there was such interest in capturing him, he decided he couldn't hide out in Russia, and then fled to Greece. While in Greece, he decided to keep up the family business and set up his own criminal enterprise, particularly drug smuggling and contract killing. Due to his notoriety, he was once on Russia's top 10 most wanted list. But he wouldn't stay on that list long. That's because on January 31st, 1997, a Russian hitman named Alexander Postovov strangled Alexander Solonik. Too many Alexanders. Anyway, he strangled him to death in his villa. Hitman taken out by another hitman. What do you think about this story? Have you ever heard of this guy before? The Mante people are one of the earliest known ethnic groups, or supposedly known ethnic groups, of Aceh, Indonesia, which is the westernmost province of Indonesia. Today, these people are extinct or have disappeared throughout history due to intermarriage with other tribes that arrived later. But to date, there's no strong scientific evidence that the Mante people ever existed or were ever real until March of 2017, which is the reason why this entry's on this list. In March of 2017, there was a group of bike riders in Aceh, Indonesia, and they were recording themselves as they were riding bikes when they stumbled upon a mystery. They accidentally saw and recorded a man that they thought was a Mante tribesman. The alleged Mante man was surprised by the encounter and fled into the woods. The video was uploaded to YouTube and quickly became a viral topic of discussion in the area. The spread of the news was so wide in that area that even the government there got involved. They sent out a search team to see if they could find the man or any of the tribe to see if they really existed. But to this day, we have no answers other than this video. Therese Neumann was a German mystic and stigmatic. Neumann has been considered a servant of God by the Catholic Church since 2005. She was born in Germany on April 9, 1898. And at the age of 20 in 1918, she became paralyzed when she fell off a stool while helping her uncle in the barn. She kept getting injured around this time, which resulted in hysterical paralysis, blindness, and even developed gastric issues when she came down with appendicitis. But on April 29, 1923, her eyesight was restored, and she credits the blessings of Therese of Lisieux for this miracle. Therese of Lisieux, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If not, I'm sorry. I'm a Christian, but I'm not Catholic. Therese of Lisieux became a saint by the Catholic Church a few years later in 1925. The day that she was canonized as a saint by the church, Theresa Neumann's, her bed sores and all of her illnesses seemed to have disappeared, and she credited these miracles to the new saint. But not all of her illnesses went away. She still had appendicitis, and prior to having surgery, her family took her to the church where they began praying for her. She then announced that the praying worked and there was no need for the appendicitis surgery because it was cured. Of course, doctors and skeptics were skeptical, and they think all of her illnesses were hysterical or just in her head, and she wasn't actually sick. Things would only escalate because on March 5th, 1926, she would develop stigmata. These are the bodily wounds, scars, or pain that appear in the locations corresponding to the crucifixion wounds of Jesus Christ. She would also claim to have visions of Jesus. She said that she saw visions of Jesus with 3 of his apostles and Jesus' crowning of thorns. Then, on Good Friday, she claimed to have visions of the entire Passion of the Christ, followed by visions of the resurrection on Easter. Then, in March of 1928, these stigmatic claims were investigated by doctors and church officials. They found that her behavior was a little suspicious because her wounds would only appear once she asked everyone to leave the room. But that wasn't her only extraordinary claims. From 1923 till her death in 1962, Therese claimed to live without food or water and was only sustained by the Holy Communion. So, in July of 1927, these claims were once again investigated. The investigation took about 15 days and was conducted by medical professionals. At the beginning of the investigation, she weighed 121 pounds. And 15 days later, she weighed 112.5 pounds. But once the investigation concluded and she was all alone, her weight went back to normal. These tests were never ever repeat it, and her family repeatedly denied any future requests for any additional testing. On April 18, 1943, 4 local boys in Worcestershire, England, were poaching for bird eggs, and they came upon a large wych elm. Thinking the tree would be a good location to find eggs, one of the boys decided to climb into the hollow tree. As he climbed up the tree and looked down into it, he discovered a skull. At first he thought it was an animal skull, but after looking at it a little closer and seeing the human hair and teeth, he realized it was a human skull. Since the boys were trespassing and illegally hunting, they decided to all sneak home and not report the incident to anyone. But when the boys got home, one of the kids it just didn't sit right with him, so he reported it to his parents. The police immediately launched an investigation, and inside the tree they found an almost complete skeleton, a shoe, a gold wedding ring, and some fragments of clothing. The skull still had some hair, and it had a clear dental pattern despite missing some teeth. And after further investigation, the remains of the hand were found near the tree. The body was removed and sent off for testing, and it was immediately established that the body was of a woman who had been dead for at least 18 months. This puts her time of death in or before October of 1941. The officials also found some evidence that she may have died from suffocation, and that she was placed into the tree shortly after death due to her body not being able to fit in it once rigor mortis set in. Due to the large amount of evidence, you figured the officials could have figured out easily who this person was. But unfortunately, this is right in the middle of World War II, and there were so many missing people during that time, so they couldn't properly identify who it was. The following year in 1944, graffiti related to this incident appeared on a wall in Birmingham. The graffiti said, "Who put Bella in the wych elm?" which is the reason why this segment is named this. And it's since at least the 1970s. Similar graffiti has been found on the Hagley obelisk, near where the body was found. Despite all the evidence and the multiple investigations, the police never identified who this person was. However, there are a few theories. One theory is that she was a sex worker named Bella, who had disappeared in 1941 and was reported by another sex worker in 1944. And the name Bella from the graffiti suggests that the writer was probably aware of the victim's name. Another theory came from a police report in 1953. A statement by Una Malsop said that her ex-husband, Jack Mosop, and a Dutchman named Van Ralt had put the woman into a tree. According to her report, her ex-husband and the Dutchman were at a bar drinking when they met a drunk woman. They said that she had passed out, and they placed her into the tree as a prank. Just a prank, bro. But then they became worried that maybe she died in that tree. Jack Mosop, the ex-husband, was then confined to a mental hospital due to having reoccurring nightmares of the woman staring at him from the tree. He died in that mental hospital before the body was found. The likelihood of this police report or theory is very low because Una waited 10 years after her husband's death to report it, and also it doesn't really explain the missing hand or the missing teeth. Another theory that I find interesting is witchcraft. Archaeologists believe that witchcraft could have been involved due to the severing of the hand. This is an occult ritual called the Hand of Glory that had a lot of similar characteristics of this case. Another popular theory is that this woman was somehow involved in a spy ring, once again World War II, and they believe that she could have been compromised or killed by a rival spy agency. But anyway, like I said, this case is still unsolved to this day. What's your favorite theory? You have your own? Comment down below. Edward Mordrake is more of an urban legend than a mysterious person. But according to the lore, Mordrake was born in the 19th century with a face on the back of his head. The second face reportedly had a pair of eyes and a mouth that drooled. And the face was also supposed to be able to whisper, laugh, and cry. It's also reported that the face would sneer when Mordrake was happy and laugh when he was crying. The eyes would supposedly wander around and the mouth constantly moving, but no noise would ever come out. According to legend, Mordrake asked doctors to please remove his demon face. He claimed that at night it would whisper things to him, things that one would only speak about in hell, according to Mordrake. But no doctors would touch it. This led Mordrake to live in complete seclusion, even denying visits from his own family, until Mordrake ultimately killed himself at the age of 23. But like I said, this is more of an urban legend. The first known writings of Mordrake appear in 1895 in articles in the Boston Post by fiction writer Charles Hildreth. The article describes a number of cases of human freaks, including the woman who had a tail of a fish, a man with the body of a spider, and Edward Mordrake. Hildreth claimed that these reports were real and got them out of old reports of the Royal Scientific Society. But the Royal Scientific Society wasn't invented until the 1970s, almost 100 years after these articles are written. Also, if you do search the records of a similar name, Royal Society of London, there's no Edward Mordrake. So with all that being said, it seems like Hildreth just made these articles up and got it published by the newspapers just so they could sell more newspapers. Glad to see the news has always lied. Queen of Sheba is a figure from the Bible. In the original story, she brings a caravan full of goods, and she takes them to the Israelite king Solomon. She brought spices, gold, and other precious stones. And then once they exchanged gifts, she returned home. Most historians identify Sheba with the South Arabian kingdom of Saba in present-day Yemen or Ethiopia. It should be noted that the queen's existence is debated among historians, and that the Jewish, Christian, Islamic, Yemenite, and Ethiopians have all elaborated on this story. And so there are many backstories and many rabbit holes to follow on her. I've looked all over for this guy, and the only thing I can find using the exact spelling from the Iceberg is a single web page. And of course, it is one of the most reliable sources on the internet, an iFunny post. I'm just gonna read the post off for you. King Koloksai is arguably one of the most obscure, mysterious figures in history. He was named by multiple ancient historians. What is known that in the 8th and 7th BC, he united all Scythian tribes to form the empire known as the Koloksai dynasty. Since the Scythians had no writing system or documents, there's nothing about this guy that's known and seemed to vanish by the 6th century BC. Once again, all I can find on this guy. If you know of anything else about him, I'm interested. Please comment down below, please. Adam Rayner. Adam Rayner was an Austro-Hungarian man who's the only person in history to have both been a dwarf and a giant. Adam was born in Austria in 1899, and as a child he was described as small, weak, and fragile. And in 1917, at the age of 18, he only measured to be about 4 feet tall. And since he was so short, he was refused entry into the Austro-Hungarian army, which was recruiting because this was during World War I. They didn't take him because of his dwarfism. A typical characteristic of dwarfism is an adult whose height is below 4'10". Several years later, likely the result of a pituitary tumor that was identified later, Adam had a dramatic growth spurt. Between his early 20s and 30s, he gained the height average of 3.16 inches per year. And by 1932, at the age of 33, Rayner had gained the height of 7 foot and 2 inches. His shoe size went from a size 10 to a 20 in just 3 years. 2 doctors examined Rayner, and they found a benign pituitary tumor, which was responsible for his enormous growth spurt. The doctors were able to remove the tumor, but prior to the surgery, he'd gotten so big that Adam just couldn't stand anymore. He was so weak for his huge body. Shortly after the surgery, Adam was then placed in a home for the aged, where he resided until his death on March 4th, 1950 at the age of 51. He had reached a final height of 7 feet and 8 inches. Hopefully I pronounced this right. The Esbersberg Forest White Woman refers to a ghostly woman who is occasionally spotted near Esbersberg Forest. Esbersberg Forest is located in Germany and is one of the largest woodland areas in the country. And the White Woman refers to a ghostly sighting. According to the legend, the ghost of a woman in white, lights, or ghost orbs can be seen near the edge of the forest while driving. The legend goes on and says that this is supposedly a woman who died and lost her kids in a car accident, and she's wandering up and down the road looking for them. However, this should be noted that this is all local legend, and it's not a definitive person like others on this list. It also should be noted that there's no consensus on who this woman was from a crash, because they can't find such a case where a woman and a couple kids died in a car wreck near the area. So, I don't know. Interesting local legend, I guess. Undervick was a Russian author who has intrigued me the most out of this entire Iceberg, all 7 hours of this list. And that's because, the iFunny post I showed you earlier, I can't even find that about this guy. Apparently, he was an author in Russia who wrote extremely controversial takes on such hot topics as religion and government. And because of this, the Russian government didn't like him and has wiped the internet of him. Go ahead, try Googling. Bet you won't find much. Probably find the one webpage that I did that I got this information from. Anyway, they say most of his writings are still there, but they're only in physical form and in Russian and in Russia. So they're very difficult to come by. Like I said, this one has piqued my curiosity the most. I want to know what he said that they hated or feared so much that they just banned him and wiped him from the internet. If you know anything about him, please comment down below. Wow, we finally made it. The bottom of the iceberg. Sorry it took 12 months. I was expecting to do this entire thing in 5. I'm eternally grateful for this series. It got the channel monetized, so if you haven't commented or liked or anything yet, or hit the subscribe button, could you please do that at this time? Y'all have a great day.